Okay, so I'm going to recap from last week some of the examples of GitHub sites that we went over. RVC Eagles Life is a website hosted on GitHub. It has a domain bought through GoDaddy, but pointed to GitHub with just HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. It does have some, we do have some plugins in here. Like this one here is a chat plugin that's brought into the page called Tikio. And then an FAQ is also brought in as well, embedded in the page. Next one's a phone app page that's being used for development to show the user what the phone app does, getting started with development on what they need to do. Second is new iOS course page, ioscourse.co. Again, bought through domain is GoDaddy, which on average anywhere between $2 a year to $20 a year for a domain name. And then once you go through the steps on setting up a GitHub organization, you can then create a repo with the same organization name, and then go into GoDaddy and make a few changes, and voila, you're now have a fully qualified domain with content that you can update easily through GitHub. And so then this week, and then we went over some, how to create a new organization. So watch the podcast from last week if you have not done so yet, if you weren't here. You'll create a repo of your new organization name. You'll add all the files from your latest plunker into the GitHub repo. And this is what it'll end up looking like on the overhead. So here's what we did last week. Since last week, I've had 121 commits to the page, which seems like a lot, but a lot of it's just files adding back and forth. There was quite a few code changes, but I've also created just myself. I'm using a branch to update week by week code, which we only have a few more weeks left. But let me just show you real quick. As far as organizations in my account, I have my username ChewCon, then I've got RVC Eagles is an organization I created, Aqua Aerobics organization I created, iOS Course, and Conco List. Conco List was one we created last week, and I had you'll be creating one as well if you've not done so already. It'll be your last name List, and once you create an organization, you'll notice in my organization, Conco List, there's only one repo, and it's called concolist.github.io. Once you do that, basically once you create a repo with the same name of your organization, .github.io, it then becomes a fully qualified website, as I'll show you in the settings here. Concolist.github.io is now checkmark green, and GitHub does that for you once you create it. So basically, it's a two-step process. Create an organization, then from the organization, creating a repo with that organization name, .github.io. Then you can then browse out, like I'll click on this link here, and I can now browsing out to concolist.github.io, which was where we ended up last week. When I first, the first example anyway, of what we ended up last week with, which is what yours ended up looking like. I believe the version before 2 weeks ago was what this looked like here, which is like version 3.2 or something like that. So this week we're going to take the next step, and week 14 we're going to start mobilizing the app to where we can do this. I'll give you an example here. So here's my fully qualified RVC list.github.io, and I'm in the assignment examples link. in our modules. You guys should be able to access this. And so you'll notice in the URL, it's got a question mark list equals eggs, comma, milk, comma, bread as an example list that you might have in a shopping list, right? When you click on this, it brings up a alert saying welcoming people to the shopping list app created by Rock Valley College, JavaScript Web233 students, questions, email Professor Conkle with my email, register at rockvalleycollege.edu. We have registration up. And it populated the list with what was in the pass by reference, which is one of the things we'll go over in just a second in our notes. And pass by reference basically is what it sounds like, or pass by value is really what it's doing. It's an object, in this case, called list with 3 items in the list, which is eggs, milk, and bread. And we're using it. I'm using a get command to grab the contents of that and populate the array. Also, you'll notice from last week, we updated the list to just be item only, getting rid of cost, making it to where a user can type in an item and then just use the enter key instead of the add key, which a lot of times users like. And it's more fluid on adding and getting rid of the items in the cart. And the last thing this week we started working on is this share list button here. The share list button will take everything in the current shopping list array. And right now you'll notice it's only milk and bread. And you'll notice in the URL it created the question mark list equals milk, comma, bread. All right. Now, if we took out or added another one or brought another one in, like say we brought eggs back in, milk, bread, eggs is now in there. Okay. And you'll notice I just have a simple pop-up that says copy and share list. The reason I think that'll work better is iOS and Android copy things differently. And Windows copy things differently. Windows is Control-C. Mobile devices, for the most part, you press and hold and copy to copy it. So I just put copy and share list, and then the user can use it however. What I was working on, I wanted to get working for tonight. Well, I'll get it working by next week. I've got the code in there. I'll show it to you. And it does work locally. It's just not working on the website yet. Is a bit.ly URL shortener to where it not only creates the list in the function, which I'll show you in a second, but it shortens a list with a bit.ly API, which what we will do tonight, just to jump ahead for next week, is I will have you sign on to bit.ly and create a bit.ly account and show you what you're going to need for next week. Because you're going to need an API username and an API code for it to work. I'll figure out why it's not working, but something I missed, I know. But anyway, we can at least share a URL. And when we send this to folks, they can open it up from their phone and get the list that you just created. Now, also, too, if I go back in here and get rid of everything to pass by reference and just hit enter, you'll notice it still saves as a cookie. The cookie is still bringing in the information because one of the things for database-wise we're using instead of XMLs, we're using a cookie, which is reading the cookie name in mine, which I think is called Conkle list or something. I think yours should be your last name list, I believe is what I had you guys created as. And so even with this list as it is, say if you're creating the list on your phone or on your tablet or on your computer, and it's just in the array itself, there's no pass by reference up here. When you click the share list, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to bring in the list only in the top area, which is the shopping list. It won't bring in the list below, which would be the added to. Will not bring it in there. And the purchased area won't bring it in there. I also put this ugly shared URL just so you'd see what it looks like once the OK is clicked on. Now also too, if you get rid of all of these out of there, notice your share button goes away. Share button goes away. The share button only comes in whenever the shopping list has some items in it. Make sense? And so basically that's a functionality. Everything's functional. I want this button to center, which right now it's not doing. I didn't play with that much, but I'm wanting it to center underneath shared list here whenever it loads. This part's working like I want it to, which is copy and share list prompt. There is another function I've seen in JavaScript I played with before called copy. Problem with the copy on JavaScript is, everything copies differently on device. So if it's Windows only, it'd be no big deal. We'd use a Windows.copy clipboard, but it will not work on a mobile device. And so this, I think, will work much better. And especially when you have the shortened URL bit.ly in there, it'll work nicer. In fact, let me show you. I think I still have it running on my local. Let me show you what it looks like locally. It does work locally. I just don't have it working externally right now. And so let me put some items in here. There's a bit.ly right there. See, it created the list. It created the bit.ly shortened URL, puts it in the, just like it did before, just like it's doing now, but it's a shortened URL, which is a lot nicer to copy. And boom. So that's what we'll get. We'll do that next week. I'll have it working by next week. But it is working locally. I just don't have it working. I think I'm missing a call to a JavaScript library or something. And so, but anyway, you'll see it in the code this week when you look at my source code, that bit.ly code that's in there. You'll definitely see it. So let's go over, and by the way, I already have the source code linked from last week. It's a zip file. This week is a direct link to my GitHub page for RBC list. When you click on that, it'll take you right to the code, and you can see exactly, like, these were updated 20 some minutes ago. The CSS was updated last week. And you literally can click on each one of these to see the source. And it gives you a line by line. If you want to see the raw data, you can just click the raw button. And in the video, which you'll definitely need to watch, I'll show you how to do everything I've just showed you on GitHub to get it up and running. Okay. So let's go into the discussion for week 14. And I will post everything. I'll turn everything on later as far, but I'll tell you what you're needing to do this week. This week is week 14. We're creating the shared URL. Make sure it's on GitHub, your website. And I would say at this point, when you get everything on GitHub, you'll submit week 13 URL to your GitHub URL, which you did last week. In the, I believe I had them do it in the assignment, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see here. Week 13 assignment. Yeah, so submit the URL to GitHub at the end of that assignment. You'll do that. For this week, you're going to modify, and you'll notice there's no version whatever in there right now, but this week you're going to modify it to where you'll add in the shared feature into your code, make it functional by looking at my code. And really this week and next week, that's what we're doing. And I'm not going to really add any more discussion or submit this, submit that. I don't want to mess with that. I'd rather have you focus on working on the site and getting it working versus did I forget to submit that, forget to submit this. Because the thing is, 2 weeks from tonight, make sure that's the right date I've got. I think it is. Pull up the calendar. This is week 14. I think it's right. And it's the 17th. So yeah, next week's the 24th. The week after that is May 8th. Is that right? No. May 1st. Let me pull it up here.
I think finals week is the second.
Yeah, it's a second week. So our last week is a week is May 1st, right? May 1st, our last session, right, before finals. Because what we're going to do on May 1st, which is 2 weeks from tonight, you're going to present your app basically as it is by then. So this week we're working on the shortening or the creating shared URL. Next week I'll show you how to do the shortening part. I know some of you still have to work on some CSS stuff, but it's going to take you a bit to get everything ported over to GitHub, but not long. We did it last week, and no time. Once you watch the video, it shouldn't take you too long. About 10, 15 minutes to get everything ported over. But then you'll be able to work on your CSS, work on getting your app functional as it is. Mine's very bare bones. I'd like you guys to put maybe some photos in it, some more formatting, stuff like that, to where after you've submitted it to GitHub, you'll actually be able to bring it up on your phone and test it, and also share it with others as well. And it looks pretty good. The formatting looks really good on the phone. I used it about 5 or 6 times already in the last week at the store, and had my wife use it, who is non-techie, and she used it and did great. So the thought is to actually be able to use it, she'll be able to click a share button now after this week, share a list with anybody and keep it, or we can keep using it over and over again, however we want to do it. So the URL past values, let's look at that. It's a Stack Overflow link I want to look at for a second. Basically, it's how to get data from a URL, which is a big question that developers have, JavaScript developers have, other PHP developers have. And so basically, the example here is this person was trying to pass some data from one page to another. The value of the object is called name, and the name of the object is called name, and the value is something. So name equals something, but the whole piece is right here. Question mark, name equals something. Now, since we're not doing a server-side script code, we're doing Java-side, I suggest putting the /index.html question mark, then object name equals, and then whatever variable values you want past that, separated by commas. And so basically, they go into a whole bunch of different ways to do it. And the one that I ended up using, there's a lot of them to use, is I think this first one, which is I used the get name one, which might be a little different than what we're showing here, but I'll show you what I ended up using. This one here takes the URL.index of, looks for basically a question mark, okay, for that, and puts a +1 in it. And this is basically to start whatever query. It's an index value here right now we're looking at, like a number value. So we'll say it's abc.com, question mark, whatever that value is of abc.com, question mark, number value, let's say it's 8, +1 would make it 9. So the query would start at 9. It would end at index of #, +1, is one example it gives here. It could also be a question mark, or actually on this one here, it's actually looking at the end of the URL. For this example, is a # that they use, or a length. If they don't have a # at the end of it, it just looks for the whole length of the string +1. So if pound is there, that's the end. If it's not there, it looks for the length of the string +1. So query start, query end, we'll say 8 and 15 on the end. Then query URL.slice, query start, query end, -1. It's going to basically give a snippet. It's kind of like giving a snapshot of everything past the question mark to the end of the string. Excluding, in just a second, you'll see the equal sign. It'll split it on that. Then it brings it into the next line and does a pairs equals query.replace. This is a regex of looking and replacing everywhere it can find any type of weird or backspace plus symbol within the code. It's going to get rid of that in the URL and replace it with nothing, just empty nothing here, and split it with the ampersand. Ampersand is if you had multiple pairs of value objects. So say we had list, I don't know, store, those two. There'll be two value objects, and if you're going to pass a URL value more than one, you need to split it with an ampersand. And so it'll be list equals eggs, comma, bread, ampersand, store equals Highlander, comma, Walmart, something like that. That makes sense? And so you've got two objects here with two lists separated by an ampersand. So if it finds that, it'll split it to that. The next is parameters, left and right bracket, an I, an N, a V, an NV. This you'll see in a second where this is used for decoding basically the query that's in the URL. Then it does a multiple for loop to decode the URL of any injection or Java or any weird text that might be in there. It also splits it, you'll notice here on this line, by the equal symbol, everything to the right of the equal symbol. So everything to the left of the equal symbol, which is basically going to be question mark equals, is 1. 2 would be the contents past the equal symbol. So the whole string, basically. So here it's decoding, because in this case, the example here is splitting it and getting two objects. So it puts one object in an N and one in a V. And then it says here, if it doesn't have parameters N through left right bracket, it's going to push it to null, meaning it's not there. There's nothing there. And then finally return the parameters. And here's how you would push it. There's a long string, and then here's the parameters push. Now I took that I didn't use mine like that. But that's one example of what you could do. I'll show you what I did on mine. So here's my Git request. And I'll blow this up a little bit so we can see a little bit better. All I simply did was grab the window location bar, which that's the window.location.search is the actual URL bar. And any browser, mobile, web, laptop, desktop, whatever. Then URL search name. The name, actually, you'll see in a second, is actually going to be whatever object name. In this case, I think I have it called list object. So it's searching for list is what it's searching for here, and plugging it in this num variable. Then it says name.length, which would be list.length, which would be 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be put in the name1 variable. So name1, 3, plus num, plus 1, the length of everything before the value. So basically, it's going to be put in their list. It'll get enough information there that basically for list equals is what it's going to give in there, basically. Then the var front equals URL substring from 0 to the front length, which is the entire length of everything before the value, which should be about 3 or 4, no, 5, I think is what it is. It's going to replace front with nothing, and you're going to end up with, it'll search for an ampersand, which would split it, which I don't use in my URL. If I did, it would split it on that. If num is greater than or equal to 0, it's going to return a substring of the, if I have more than one ampersands in there. Otherwise, it's going to return just a URL, which is the length, and is what it returns for mine, which is list equals. So you'll notice in the function I have called for the onload event. The onload event, the windows.onload event function, that's the welcome message that everybody gets. So I'll pop that up to show you here. This is the welcome message it gets. It's being called in that on Windows onload event. So the function alert, you just saw that. And then it calls a populate shopping list on load. This is only called once on the onload event when the app loads in the browser. It's only called once. It's populate shopping list on load. You guys have already seen this display shopping list and clear focus. But this is only called once. I'm going to go and look at that one. The populate shopping list on load clears out the shopping list array, clears out the add to cart array, loads the cookie from my local phone, computer, laptop, tablet, whatever, and it looks for a cookie called Conco list, puts it in the variable y. The next line 118 removes unwanted characters from the cookie, and we'll look at that in just a second. Line 121, a variable get URL list value get list. Here's where I call that function I just went over. I'm calling it list. And the only thing you need to make, and you can call it whatever. I just call mine list because that's what I put in the URL. It can be called shopping list if we wanted to. You just need to make sure when we show you in a second, when I click that share list button, it's whatever you call it here. And so mine's called list, so you'll see that in a second, the URL, using the word list in there. But it can be whatever you want it to be. Just make sure it makes sense to the function, which this is a list. I could call it shopping list to be longer. If this next one just sees if there's objects value or if this object has content. If get URL list value has content, if it does, here I split it by commas because remember in that list equals, it's eggs, comma, whatever, comma, whatever, comma, whatever, comma. So it's splitting by commas, putting it in the get URL list value. Then those comma values are then going to be added into, and by the way, this is actually now converted to an array because of this get URL list value dot split. That will convert, that converts this list value, get URL list value into an array. Your next line takes a shopping list, which is an array already, and gets all the value content from that get URL list value, which is on line 123. Let's say it's empty. There's nothing in get URL list value, meaning there's nothing in there. It's just the name of your domain .github.io. That's it. Mine was concolist.github.io or rbclist.github.io. It's going to go to the Y. Y is looking for the cookie. If there's something in there, it's going to split it by this right here. The pound or the percentage to C, which is technically the comma in hex code in the top of your URL. Because if you guys type in a comma in a URL and copy and give it to somebody, it's going to come back as that. It's going to put that in there for you for the comma in place of the comma. And so here it splits it, and it only shows up this way on a cookie. You'll notice on a split by URL, it doesn't. You just have to put a comma in there. But the cookie also saves it as a comma, but this is the hex code for comma that you would use. So it's splitting on that. It's doing the same thing, by the way, as this line did, but it's doing it for the cookie. Taking that array now, which is a Y array, and we'll say has 4 items in it, and now takes that Y array and plugs it into the shopping list array. And again, this populate shopping list on load is called once. And it's only called upon load of the app. And that's for a reason. I don't want it to call every time. I just want to call it when the app loads, specifically to see if there's a cookie and to see if there's a list available in the URL. Make sense? So it's only called once in there. Now, going back up to the Windows onload event, I just went over this one, populates on load. But inside of that populate shopping list on load, there was a function in there, I believe, to remove unwanted. Here it is. So the remove unwanted was done last week as well, where you remove and format a cookie by bringing to it the cookie itself. So if it's null or empty quotes, nothing in it, it's going to return false. Else means something's in it. It's going to come in here now. First thing it does is convert it to a string, everything. Then it does it multiple places using this is using a regex. So we've got everything from barcode, like the bar thing, the bar symbol. I believe, I can't remember all these I put in here. Examples of things that cookies puts in there. I think it was bar. I think it was new line symbol, return symbol. But all of these, in fact, all you have to do to figure out what all these are, I did not put a comment on these. I think that's a space. Yeah. %220 is a space. %24, we'll Google that. Let's see. Care code. %24 is $. Yeah, it puts $. Oh, I know what that one was for. Remember when we had in the app the $? For the cost? That's why I had that in originally. And then %7C. %7C is that's the bar one. That's the bar one. And so I go through the string, clear. If it finds it, the regex finds it in the cookie, it clears it out. If it was a bar, it could put a nice space there. If it's a $, it replaces it with a $. And then space would eat up any space that might be in there. Then the final one was this here. So I'll highlight that. It's everything in here. Placing it. Let's see. All characters are not a care symbol. Oh, from space to, it's a non-printable characters. That's what it is, non-printable characters. That is non-printable characters. So everything is non-printable characters, what it would replace there. And the G for the, remember back on the regexes, the /G is global, meaning if you don't put that in there, it'll only replace the first instance when it finds it. So again, that you'll need that to strip all unwanted things from the cookie. The main thing it's going to hit once your changes are made this week is definitely going to be the space it'll hit. $, won't be there anymore because we're got rid of the cost. Bar sign won't be there anymore. Unwanted, non-printable characters, you'll need that. And so that's the unwanted, remove unwanted. So going back to the function, window on load equals function. We just went over that. The display shopping list. I did make some changes in that this week. So I'll scroll down to that one. In the display shopping list, I threw a comment in there. It's actually right where it's on line 247, where it says var btn share list equals. Then it has a button, and the button is from the button class, name shares, type button, value share list, and you notice it's calling the function share, which we'll look at in a second, the JavaScript function. I added that. And in the if statement for array length, if there's content in the array list. Then it's going to populate the list as always. This is what we've had thus far in the my list inner.html. But I added the share button inner.html and the HTML. So it adds it there. If the list goes away, meaning everything's has been brought down from the top of the shopping list to the bottom, added to the cart, then it gets rid of that share button, and it gets rid of anything in the share list. That code I have in there right now gets rid of that as well. So let's go back up to the function for share, which is the button. And let's see here, that is on line 47. Line 47. And notice the share function is only calling one other function called pass list. If you scroll up to line 23, there's a whole bunch of stuff commented out. That is the stuff that is not working on GitHub right now. I will get it to work, but we'll go over real quick. Here, this var login equals with that ugly login name. That's a login that Bitly will give you, your own login name. It'll also give you your own API key, which I'll show you how to do that in just a second, because you're going to need that for next week. I'm going to pass line 27 and 29 for right now and go right to the next commented line, which is a get JSON. The $.getJSON, this whole function here is one function, and it's a JSON function, and it's calling the Bitly JSON right here. Let's call back question mark. It's pulling in format JSON, which I think I showed you a few examples a couple weeks back. The API key, which is up here, I just went over on line 26. The login, line 25. The login, or the long URL, is line 27. And you'll notice the long URL is rvclist.github.io, index.html question mark, list equals plus the shopping list array. So anything's in the shopping list array, it's going to go in there past the equal sign. So the function here is what's not working right now on the website, but I will get it to working. The function response, this right here. When it is working, which is working locally, I showed you, what it does on this function response is the API, if it responds, is going to be true right here. I'm highlighting here, if it responds. Meaning, it's going to respond with the data.url, which is the Bitly short URL now. And I put it in the HTML tag share list, div tag, and also copy to clipboard function, which we'll look at in a second. So let's go back up to the code here that is showing. This is what's working now on the external site. Var long underscore URL, already went over that. Questions on that? That's just the URL, your GitHub URL with the array in the end of it, the shopping list array. Document.getElement by ID, share list.inner.html equals share URL, new line, then that URL, whatever it might be, which is this right here with the list. And then finally, copy to clipboard, same URL. When we go to the copy to clipboard, all it's doing is doing a Windows prompt, tells the user copy and share list with the URL content. Let me go back to the top of my GitHub page here. I'm going to click on the GitHub repo. I'll have you guys do it along with me if you want, the rvclist.github.io, and scroll down to the index.html. All I made changes on this one was the share list button I added, and a share button and a share list I added. And you've already seen the code for that. So that's a placeholder for the share button and a placeholder for for the share list on the inner HTML tag. Only changes made there. Okay, I'm gonna go back. No changes made in the CSS whatsoever. So going back to the JavaScript.html or the JavaScript.script.js, in version 4.1, get name, pass list, and really for this week, all you need to put in there is the this information here is not commented out. Share, function share. And you'll see in here version 4 and 4.1. So if you weren't here last week and you've not worked on this, you'll need to do both, 4 and 4.1 both. Copy to clipboard is also this week. Nothing changed. So I think I put everything new from 54 and up. Line 54 and up is new. Yeah, I moved everything around. Up to line 54 is new. And where you see window.onload, that's all the same. And then the only things changed below line 54 or 55 was the one I already showed you, which was the populate list on load, and the add to shopping. No, take it back. Add to shopping cart. Not changed, but the display shopping list showed you that. The display shopping cart, same, nothing from last week changes there. So display shopping list, the BTN add cart or the BTN share list. Yeah, BTN share list. And then the onload. Populate shopping list on load. So let me quickly run that again. Again, here's what's going to look like next week. This week is Bitly's not working, but it will. I'll put in there some content here. Milk. And you'll notice as I'm typing this in, I'm just hitting the enter key on the keyboard. I'm not having to hit the add button. And the Bitly is working. This will be working next week, and then be able to copy that. And once that's copied, I'll go and copy it from my Mac here and bring it over to a new tab. You can copy in your text message, whatever you want to do it, email, whatever, social media. Now it's pulled over, and you'll see on the Bitly expanded to the real URL, the long URL, and brought in the list equals eggs, comma, milk, bread. Pretty cool, right? And the reason I like Bitly is Bitly will take literally, you know, the max I've used on Bitly for length up to this point has been 1,056, and still did fine. So I think we should be okay. All right. And so this week, as far as the live, what I'd like to have done by next week. Let me bring up the prompt for the user, and you can, whatever text you want to put in yours is fine. This is for the class, but you would be more personal on yours. This is reading, on this one, is this reading a cookie or pass by URL value? What do you think? Just by looking at it. Looking at the URL and the contents of, I just loaded this on the browser. So is this getting milk and eggs by the URL reference list or from the cookie? From a cookie, you think? Yeah, it is. And so now, though, if I share this without making any changes, say I wanted to share it, that is going to, the long URL is there, which is fine for this week. And if I take and create a new tab here, Now this is calling it from what? The cookie or the pass by URL reference? How many things pass by URL? It is passed by URL because of, if you'll notice, URL has in it list equals milk, eggs. And I can prove that by just changing it. If I wanted to change it to something else, like say milk, eggs, bread, cookies. Even though a cookie exists, it's not going to use a cookie. It's going to use this. Right? The problem I have with that is I forgot I put a space in there, as you can see. And there's my percentage 20. I can tweak that by just getting rid of the space because I manually typed it in. If I get rid of all the spaces after the comma, we should be good. There we go. So, make sense? And so it's actually using, as soon as it did this, by the way, even though a cookie didn't exist, and it does exist now, if a cookie does exist and it uses the list equals, it's going to overwrite the cookie, remember, by default in the first display list command. So if I get rid of this, and that's because I didn't save it, didn't do anything different with it, but it's having the old one in there. So now if I share it, I didn't give it a chance to run that once. This is just the first on load. So I'll put something in there like bread, ice. Oh, I know why. I did it via URL. I didn't type it in. And what else do I want to do? Give me a product. I'm dead. Brain's dead. Give me a shopping list. Anybody? What is it? Apples? Yeah, I like apples. Good apples. All right, apples, good. And now notice list equals milk, eggs is still up there, but if I go to share, it's going to get everything in there. Copy that. Now everything's brought up in there. In fact, let me go to another browser. Like I showed you, I showed folks who were here last week. On Chrome, I like to go to the tab called New Incognito Window. What that does is it'll tell you actually what it's doing. It doesn't use any browser history. Cookies are stored. It says tabs will stick around for your browser history, cookie store, search history after you've closed. So it's perfect for web developers because when you're testing like we are, especially when you're making a lot of changes like this on your code, and you want to see what it looks like, incognito works perfect because it doesn't use any history or cookie history at all. And so it's nice to see what it looks like from fresh eyes here. There we go. And let's move some stuff around just to see if it's saving it here. Now, we're still in the session, so we're fine. We're still in the session. But if I kill this browser tab, come back into the session, and there. Makes sense? So that's the benefit of using incognito, is you clean slate each time. You don't have to clear cache and clear history each time, which you do have to do on browsers when you're testing a lot. Now, if you sit there and let it wait for 5 or 10 minutes, it'd be fine, but you don't want to do that. You want to make your changes, test them immediately, right? And so unless you have 10 hours to waste. So easier to use incognito. So again, incognito is what I recommend for Chrome. I use Chrome a lot for my incognito, by the way, will work also for mobile devices. For iPhones and Droids, the Chrome web browser on iPhones and Droids has an incognito tab that you can use. Okay. Now I'm going to show you what this thing looks like on the phone. I'll plug in my phone to the overhead here and show you what it looks like, a live version of it. And I'll let you guys keep working on it, which I'm going to get some catch up to do some of it and get that done. Basically, the next 2 weeks, this week and next week, is it, getting your site. Final version will be everything working plus Bitly next week. So once you guys get caught up with the GitHub page, you get that done. It's working on your GitHub repo. You got your new organization. Copied everything over from Plunker. Stripped out the cost. Added in the features I just showed you by looking at my code. You can do that. Tweaking your CSS, and you can look at my CSS and borrow that for sure. But try to make it your own. Your CSS your own by maybe doing different colors than what I use or something. Make sense? And whatever images you want to bring in, like a shopping cart would be nice or something like that. Because in 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be presenting what you've done. And you'll be able to actually use this. It'll be your app that you can use all the time. All right. So I'm going to go to the live events.